Emma, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'd love to start with the one big thing. When we started talking, you were holding the CEO role.
Yeah.
And a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, you made the announcement that you decided to step down. So I'd love to just, I guess, understand the thought process and what you went through with that decision.
Yeah, so good question, given everything that's going on. So I set up Grafter in 2021, a flexible workspace company, and we've kind of been going from strength to strength. And I suppose personally, as you may know, I just started thinking about my next steps personally and where I wanted to be. And I feel that we kind of brought the business into, I suppose, a certain size, and we've, expanded into London. I feel like I've kind of given it everything that I wanted it to give. But also I think in the position, in a CEO role, as the business kind of expands and develops, you also need to think about who's actually the best person to lead it. So I feel the company is kind of going into its next phase. And also it's been amazing over the last couple of years getting to see the different markets that we've gone into in London. And I feel like there's kind of now a natural gravitation for me to actually go there. And I kind of, I suppose, expand my horizons in that way. Yeah.
And so out of Ireland, do you think?
I think it seems to be this gravitation, and I don't really understand why. I've worked in the flexible workspace, I suppose, industry in Dublin for over 10 years now. So I know it inside out at this point. So I feel like it's kind of time for a new challenge in that way. And when we set up Grafter, that was 21. And then in 2022, we did that expansion into London. So kind of was, again, it's just that natural gravitation over. So who knows? I don't know. But
it's incredibly self-aware, just what you're saying, to get the business to this point.
Yeah.
Are you the person, or is your skill set potentially what's needed to get it to the next phase? Or, was that part of what you were thinking?
No, it was. No, definitely. I think it was, I suppose, in all honesty, it was probably my own personal gravitation and my own development. I felt like, growing Grafter, as you probably know yourself, in terms of setting up a business, hitting the ground running, like it's been a crazy few years, but it's been amazing. And again, I'm always trying to think about the next step. So you probably laugh, like I'm thinking about where I want to be now. And yesterday, even I was thinking to myself, I was like, once I get that done, if that's what I'm interested in, where would I go beyond that? So I'm actually going 2 steps now to think of where I am. And I suppose when you get into that mindset, you need to be honest with yourself as well. It's like, are you the best person for that team, for the Grafter team? So that was ultimately my decision of why I decided to move on.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You've analysed it. You've pulled it apart in every way. And where is your future? What do you want from this? And I know in your announcement you said that it was an incredibly difficult decision. So I can only imagine the assessment that you had to make to come to that.
No, definitely. It was really hard because I'm not leaving a job that I don't like. Yeah. I'm leaving something that when you create something from the ground up, I love the business. I love the team. So it was a really, really difficult decision. It was actually quite an emotional decision, to be honest. But again, it's kind of knowing when to be there and when's time to actually move on. And I think when your mentality shifts in that way, you kind of just need to draw a line in that way. But I'm still a shareholder of the business, so I'm still going to be around in some sort of capacity. But ultimately, I think that there's a big opportunity now for somebody to come in and actually a fresh mindset on it. So I'm really excited to see what the team do. Also gives the team more of an opportunity in their own roles to kind of move up. So I'm really excited for them. Yeah, it'd be great.
And how did the team and your collaborators take the news?
I think they were really shocked, because I think they were literally Emma is Grafter till she dies kind of way. It's an area I still am, like I still be the biggest cheerleader for them. I think they were genuinely shell-shocked at the start, but they're so supportive, because I think when you're with your team, if you're, I don't know, manager of a department or a team or whatever, I think when you always have that honesty, with your team in terms of how you're feeling and where you want to go. Also opens up conversations on their side about how they're feeling in terms of their own role. So they got it. They totally understood it. They're so supportive. I think they're just genuinely shocked.
Yeah, of course, because they look to you to lead, and sometimes a disruption can be, as you say, can make something for other people in there, but it can, depending on the foundations, it could potentially crumble as well.
Totally. So one of the biggest things, so when I knew that I had made my decision, I spoke with senior management to make a plan. Because when something like that happens, not that the dynamic can change, but people can feel, majority of people actually don't really like change. And so you kind of have to, we were trying to basically foresee any challenges that would happen. So what I've done is I've met majority actually now, I'm finishing up next week, met majority of the team to actually sit down on a one-to-one and just make sure that everything is okay. Because ultimately everything is going to be okay. It's just that they're going to be talking to a different person. It's a different face. But the business will still actually function and be consistent with what was happening before, which is actually kudos to the team itself, because I've spoken about this in length with people before in terms of, I truly don't believe that micromanaging is good. But I do believe some people do like to be micromanaged to a certain degree. That in Grafter, kind of our ethos is that everybody kind of gets the job done. They'll put their hand up if they need help. But so it's actually really shown that even me moving aside, it still goes on. It's still business as usual, which is actually really reassuring and great to see.
Yeah, so, and it's the sign of a well-structured business and good hiring.
Yeah, definitely. And I tell you, we've made so many mistakes over the years, and it took us a while to get it right, particularly when you're in a startup mode in a business. It's not for everyone. And then you have to really kind of pinpoint and figure out, the right type of personality for the job as well, Yeah,
I can imagine. What is the culture?
We're really proud of the culture, actually. We're very open and we're actually quite a tight-knit team, and we would do a lot kind of outside of the office, out of hours. Our head of operations, Kate, I think I speak to her more than I speak to anyone else in my life. But no, we kind of try and foster kind of very much so an open communication. I know you and I have spoken about it before in terms of my own personal, going through a big fertility journey and so forth, and I've had to be very upfront and open with the team in terms of what's going on, because some days I was there, some days I wasn't there. And actually that sparked more conversation in the office, what's happening with other people, whether it's, trying for a family, or as we get older, we all know that, challenges with at home with our parents are getting older and so forth. So yeah, no, we're quite close, which is great.
I think a lot of companies strive for that. What's the terminology? Psychological safety.
Yeah.
To be able to actually be yourself and speak about the real things that are happening in your life without fear of somebody thinking you're not going to perform. That safe space and culture. It creates a safe culture.
And what I find really interesting about it is that I still find it now today that people do have that sense of fear. I have found it actually with a lot of females in terms of even being upfront to say, if they're thinking even about starting a family.
Yeah.
And they're concerned. I've had so many conversations at length, and I say to them, I go, but guys, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
So it's like, no one's ever going to shut the door, but so important.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
Agree.
Yeah.
You're sparking many memories actually, when I'm with some women when we're negotiating contracts, and they might say to me, and they could be, they don't have children, but it could be within the next 5 years. And they ask me, is maternity included in the contract? And let's say a lot of companies have maternity now in the industry because there's lots of mergers and acquisitions. But prior to that, there was a lot of SME companies that didn't have maternity leave. And ladies that I worked with, women that I worked with, were afraid to ask the employer because they didn't want the employer to feel, oh, she's going to be 1 foot in and 1 foot out having babies. Like that's the mentality. And that's 3 years ago.
Like I've been in instances of that before where I've been asked, you know, what my plans are.
Whoa.
You know? Yeah, and there's a serious education piece around that. So I can understand the kind of I don't know if paranoia is the right word, but the concern around that, you know, and I do hope in time that does change.
I know.
It's really important.
I think it is now. I see it now, you know, like thankfully there's conversations where it's an expectation rather than, you know, tiptoeing around the subject. It's what maternity support is in place rather than do you have it and can you do something for this person and, you know, even some support. You know, I know companies might not be able to afford it or if they've got a large female workforce. Like I understand you know, I guess the restrictions and that come with it. But there needs to be some support, like something.
Absolutely. They shouldn't, not live in fear probably is a bit over the top, but it's kind of, you know.
It's a worry.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be a worry.
Exactly.
It's the last thing you want, a financial worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And during your time over the last 4 years, I guess when you're reflecting and you've had time to reflect on this now, what are you proud of and what are you, I guess, when you look back and say, yeah, that was good. I'm really happy I did that.
It's probably touching on actually the 2 points I mentioned. I think, so I used to live in London. I lived in London for years and I was always kind of sparked my interest of going back into the city. And I suppose that expansion that we did in 2022, I laugh to myself because I always think back to the time so we signed lease agreements for each of the buildings that we go into. And I remember sitting at my desk being like, am I actually about to sign this? You know, I was like, am I doing the right thing? Because I suppose it was a degree of risk at the time. But, you know, when you have to settle in your own mind, be like, no, I know the city. Like, you know what the market is. It's like you're able to do it. But at the same time, you're literally putting pen to paper. So it was a jump for us, but it worked out really well in the end. It also opened our mind, like Kate, our head of operations, we speak about it all the time in terms of she does a lot of travel back and forth. I'm in London every week. And it just really opens up that mindset to a different landscape, a different level of business that's over there. So I'm really happy that we did it. And also how it actually came to be was that I was in one of our buildings. We have Eli House, which is 10 Eli Place. And I was having a coffee with one of our clients. And just by chance, I just bumped into him. And he is an amazing company. It's a wealth management business with the HQ is in New York. Really, really supportive client. One of our first clients that signed up. And I just said to him, I was saying, you know, over coffee, I was like, well, what are your plans? He goes, like, now I have to go to London because we've set up our office there. Since that conversation, he said, I can't even tell you how many offices he's set up across the world. Right. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, oh, really? Because I was kind of thinking of going over and having a look. And he goes, if you find a building, I will go and I will take that space. And that's how it all kicked off.
Wow.
So
an opportunity just presenting itself.
Totally. In the end, that company ended up going in and being our anchor tenant in that building. They took the entire first floor. So it was just great, you know, to even identify or even know that you have a client that they're in that trust. So I'm so grateful to him. So what would definitely be that expansion. And then it's really going back to the culture piece of the team, that openness and the conversations that we're able to have. And, you know, just promoting, you know, them too. I kind of live by a philosophy of, you know, your teams are always going to be able to want to grow their own career and, you know, whether or not a business is going to be able to, I suppose, accommodate that over time. You're always going to have people who come in and out of the business. That's just life. I think, you know, as a business owner, you want to keep on to your really good people.
Yeah, I know. You're like, how do we do this?
It's like, how do you lock that door?
Yeah.
But ultimately, I look at it in a different way where I'm so grateful for the people who have come through the Grafter business and again, it's that openness. I've had so many conversations with people who come in and they just say, listen, this is what's going on in my life and I might have to move on. And you have to be so grateful for the time that they've given, particularly when you're in startup mode. Like it's really, really tough work. I speak to pretty much majority of the people who've actually left, who always do check-ins.
Yeah, it's great
to see how they are. And I love to get calls to them being like, oh, I was talking to such and such, oh, I was thinking about this, what do you think about that? I love that.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
That's great. And I think with a startup, the challenge is they need to buy into the vision. They need to buy into the chaos and the vision and the being able to focus on this, and then tomorrow you're focusing on something else.
Totally.
And maybe we're back to this.
Totally.
Yeah, I have a few clients in startup mode, and it is really exciting.
No, we kind of always laugh to ourselves. We're like, if we had to write down actually what our job descriptions are, because you're doing everything under the sun. Once you finish one thing, it's in my particular case, it was, take off your ops hat, put on your finance hat, then you're putting on your marketing hat, and then you're back into sales. But I would fully admit to the team, being really open, like, my background is sales. That's where my strength is. So at the start, I very quickly realized I had to take a step back and bring in people who were the experts and listen to them, rather than trying to say that I knew, because I'm not a head of finance. I'm just not. And I think you need to be really honest with yourself about that too. Yeah.
How did your career start in real estate?
Really good question. So I moved to London once I finished college, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I had so many different jobs. I actually started off in Primark pennies. They have an unbelievable training program. They're phenomenal. I went in as a manager there. Then I went and did a stint in Pure. I was absolutely abysmal in it. Like, I wouldn't even like.
And why were you so bad? Or why do you think you were so bad?
You just have to have a particular mindset. And like, I know you and I have discussed this before. I'm not an academic person whatsoever. So, writing a press release and all this stuff, it's just not for me.
Okay.
So I did a couple of different things, and it was actually my brother. So my brother started, he's like, I really think, you might be good at sales. Like, you kind of have a personality for it. And I just kind of brushed it off. This went on for, I'd say, about a year to nearly 18 months. And he was like, look, I really think you should go into property. I think you'd be good at selling houses. I was like, God. So then and behold, he was able to help me get an interview with an estate agency called Marsh & Parsons, who actually subsequently were owned by Sherry Fitzgerald. And that was really the first taste of it. I ended up basically going up to this big head office. I can't even remember where it was now. And they just handed me a car. I was like, this is great. And they told me to drive up to Notting Hill. I was like, brilliant. Driving in London, hilarious. And I ended up it was their flagship, actually, a agency up there. And they put me into lettings, because I think they got a sense from me that actually selling a house takes a considerable amount of time, so they could tell that I wouldn't have the patience for it.
Oh, God.
So they put me into lettings. I kind of hit the ground running from there. The training in London from a sales perspective is amazing. Okay. As soon as I walked in, I had 4 weeks. I had 4 weeks to do a deal. So
4 weeks.
4 weeks to do a deal.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's pressure.
Yeah, it is pressure. But you either lean into that or you run.
And what do you do? Like, is there a manual? Here's what to do in your first 4 weeks.
Well, I was very fortunate, actually. My two managers that I had at the time, Georgie and Anna, they were amazing. And they actually described it to me. I remember them sitting me down and saying, this is like sales in this environment is like you running your own business within a business. So you have the support system that's around you, but it's really you it's what you put into it is what you are going to get out of it. So you come in each week and you tot up in terms of the deals you've done, so you know what your commission is. And I actually always say that to anybody on our sales team. It's like, you need to know what you're actually earning and set your own targets too. So I just loved it.
Yeah, get you excited to get your calculator out. Like, favorite time of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so how did it evolve from there? And
I was doing that for quite some time, and then the opportunity came. I feel like my brother is like my life recruiter.
Oh,
he called me one day and he said, I know a guy called Joe McGinley, and he is setting up a company called Iconic, and he's in the process of it. I think you should go and meet him. At that stage, I genuinely did not know what a serviced office was, what a flexible workspace was. But in my mind, I was thinking, okay, it's more of a commercial selling role rather than residential. But ultimately, if you have the mindset and knowledge of sales, you should be able to shift from one product to another, is what I was thinking. Yeah. So I met with him, and then a couple of weeks later, I got handed a batch of keys and I was told to start going around Dublin too.
Wow, there's a theme here. I think you just get dropped into the deep end.
So I was just like, okay, and I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great that he was bringing a different product to the market at that stage. There was bigger, more institutional serviced offices around, and he was definitely bringing a different design, which I felt that there was an appetite for it. So it was great. Yeah, it was really good.
And just, you mentioned while you were talking there, I know we've reflected on your background and you know, and where you came from and your family, and you mentioned that you're not an academic, but I know that you come from an incredibly successful family with really strong academia behind them. How has your family shaped, and your upbringing shaped how you operate today?
I would say we're all quite naturally competitive against one another.
How many siblings do you have?
So I've got three. So 2 brothers and a sister. But what I find really funny about it is that they're all solicitors, and quite successful, either a partner in a firm or they have their own firm. So when I'm at home, there's a lot of law chat. Our dinners are interesting. But ultimately, I think my parents really instilled the work ethic, I should say, since we're young. Like, we always knew when we were kids, we saw our parents just working really, really hard, and I think it was just kind of was a natural flow through. I think I spent majority of my time in school looking out the window. So I was quite different in that sense. Very sociable person. I, always wanted to be out without my friends. I'd say if I probably did apply myself, I potentially would have done well, but it was actually more of a lack of interest.
Yeah, fair enough.
But then again, that leans onto the sales piece. Is that I'm more personable in that regard, and that is my strength. It took me a while to figure that out, but that's why I kind of laugh at my family, because they're all so successful in their own right, but they're really academic in that way. So I'm happy to be the black sheep. That's okay.
Well, you've done well. So
Thank you. Thank you.
There's a lot to be proud of. Yeah. And when you made the decision to set up Grafter and go into the market, it was in the height of COVID, May 2021.
Yeah.
So how did you make that move and say, this is absolutely going to be a success? Or did you know?
I always look back and I'm like, when did COVID end? I'm not really sure. Yeah. So I remember it was really challenging. Like 2020 was very hard. 2021, particularly in a sales role as well. Because I remember we went from meeting people in person. I'd much prefer if I to meet a client in person to show, what the solutions are. And we then went to like a virtual setup, and we were that for quite some time. It was a crazy time. But ultimately, how it all came to be was my business partner, Paddy McKillen, had just redeveloped a building on Leeson Street. Gorgeous, stunning building. And I had bumped into him and I'd asked him what he was working on. But at that time, because it was COVID, there weren't many companies around that were looking to lease an entire building. Just people weren't working in the office. So maybe a little bit of naivety on my side, but I spoke with him, I think it was maybe the Thursday, Friday. On the Monday, he was like, do you want to set up a flexible workspace company? Or, we didn't really know what it was going to be. I was like, okay, I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into. Again, throw myself into something else. And I remember sitting in the building in Leeson Street, and again, just on my own. I think I'd just gotten a laptop at that point, in the door closing, and I just had to figure it out. I was literally sitting on my own in this building that's 5,000 square foot. There was no internet. So I just had to figure it out. But ultimately what had happened in that scenario was, when you look at a Georgian building, it's already naturally, you have your individual offices already set up anyway. So it was just bringing the flexible idea into that space. And I think we had a fully let by within 3 months,
wow.
which was brilliant. And it was very reassuring in terms of like, okay, you know, again, coming back to that piece of that, I'm not an expert in operations. I'm not an expert in finance, but we can figure it out.
Yeah.
So once we got that done, then another opportunity happened for Eli Place. And then the ball just kind of just rolled from there, really.
And what does the customer want? Like, what do companies want at that time versus now?
In the flexible workspace industry, I think it's really important to have a very open mindset in terms of what a client wants, because, you know, you and I can sit down here, you can kind of give me a list of what you feel is important for right now, but that also can change. And I feel it's really circumstantial in terms of, I suppose, the type of industry your client is in, the people that they have, the location where they want to be. You know, the way I would always navigate it is actually what their pain points are. So, for example, there could be a business that I meet that would be really well suited to a Georgian building. There's a lot of privacy that's there. But, for example, maybe a tech company needs more breakout space. They need all their phone booths and, you know, all their lounge areas, and maybe they're attracting a particular type of employee. Maybe they're competing with the Googles or the Metas of the world. So that's just it's a different mindset. So you need to be open. And what I was finding at that time as setting up Grafter was a lot of leaders or, you know, heads of department or business owners were trying to, in some capacity, bring their team back together, but they didn't really know how to. And I think one of the best things that came out of COVID was more trust, that people are able to work from home when they need to work from home. Like, I know I sell office space, but like sometimes it's nice to close the door so you can appreciate that. So yeah, I think it is that open mindset. It's very different for every company. And every now and again, a client will call and be like, listen, that was okay for now, but we need to look at something else now at this time. So you try and help them navigate that through, you know.
And is that market busy?
Our market is very busy. I think ultimately the business model is flexible. So, you know, you could have a client that signs up for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. You can have your, you know, one-man band coming in just for a day or booking meeting rooms. And particularly if there's any uncertainty going on, you know, whether it's political or whatever, does a company want to tie themselves into a long-term lease? Probably not. You know, it could be a financial position where if you're setting up your company and, you know, you've got 2 or 3 employees, but you're not sure where you're going to be next year. I think the product that we provide works very well in that regard. Now, don't get me wrong, there's obviously much bigger multinational businesses who need to have, you know, your Salesforces of the world. They need to have their own home. They have their own, maintenance facilities team, whole operational things, you know, that they require. So that works well for them. But, you know, your smaller SMEs, the flexible solution, you know, does work really well.
Yeah, it just gives somebody the ability to scale up or even to scale down. As you say, sometimes there's uncertainty.
Yeah.
And from the day that you started in the CEO role and building on your leadership skills and your style as well, how has that evolved over the 4 years, or has it been a continuum?
It definitely has evolved over the years. I think the way I looked at it, and I do still look at it now, is that setting up the critical meetings with all the different departments each week and doing those touch points, you need to be able to get yourself into a situation where what's really important to marketing is really important to marketing. What's really important to finance is really important to finance. And, you know, and everybody will have their own different view, and it's trying to find that synergy between them all. And you know yourself, like, you know, one department can bash with another, but then it's actually having that bird's eye view. But I suppose it's that piece, and it's really listening to the managers as well in terms of what's going on and trying to find what the solutions are for them. That acceptance in terms of that you're not that expert, and sitting down and listening. I think that's really important. The guys will openly admit it. We do a management meeting once a week, and I'll come in and be like, I've got an idea.
And they're like, uh-oh, here we go.
Here she goes. They're like, I got this idea, or this is what I was thinking, and I kind of say it. And then in their very lovely way, they'll turn around and go, okay, that could potentially work, but actually you need to look at X, Y, and Z. or that definitely won't work because of that. And what I've learned definitely over the last 4 years is that really to listen and, you know, gather all of your information before you make a decision on things. But what's been really lovely is that over time, when you get to know your team really well and the structure kind of sets up with itself, like Kate again, our head office would say, she goes, there's some stuff that you just don't need to know anymore because we've already handled that piece. And there's trust there that it just gets done. So you can kind of focus on the future. And that's been really lovely. Yeah.
And that takes time to build, takes trust.
Definitely.
And it takes success and failure to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I've noticed it myself as well when, you know, trying to evolve into the role.
Yeah.
And sometimes genuinely I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Like, but I'm not afraid to actually admit that anymore.
I think it's great if you can.
I used to have an insecurity around it. But now it's like, okay, leave this with me. Don't have an answer. No clue. I'll come back to you. And then I might like ring 10 people and go, how do I do this? You know, but it is like you're learning and evolving. And if it's, you know, the CEO role for the first time and you're building on your years of experience, you know, in 10 years time, it's a very different conversation.
Yeah. And and what I find with that is as well, like when you're in the CEO role, how amazing people are that are actually outside of your business. And when you reach out to them and say, listen, I'm not sure, you know, how nice people are. And they really will give you their time to help you through it. I was really fortunate in the role, in my role, where because we were a part of a wider group and we had shareholders who have owned so many different, like whether it's hospitality or whatever. And I call them and they'd be like, well, what do you think about this? And they'd always give you your time. And it kind of developed into a mentorship in that sense because they had seen everything under the sun. And that just comes with experience and time, you know.
And at some point they were asking the questions as well. So I totally understand. And I see the importance of mentors and in a CEO role, absolutely. And 2 and 3 different versions of a mentor, but also for people that are, you know, building their career that, you know, are maybe mid-level or trying to move up the ranks, and like a mentor is available to people. You just have to ask, you know, constantly, how do I get to here? You know, I'm here, how do I get here? Who can help me?
Definitely. I think maybe some people have it in their minds that it has to be like a structure where it's like you're kind of signing up to something. Not
true.
Really. It's really kind of just picking up the phone or just dropping a message being like, I'd love to pick your brain on something. And there's one, Ronnie Delaney, who's actually, he's one of our shareholders. Like he would have brought like Wagamamas into Ireland and Captain Americas and so forth. And I remember just calling him all the time, being like, what do you think about this? He goes, and he always just say to me, he goes, listen, I don't know your business in and out, but if it was me, this is what I'd be thinking. And it's just nice to have that person that you're able to bounce off, and just a really solid guy. Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah.
And what does success mean to you, or what does it look like?
I think when I first started, like when you think about success, it feels like kind of a very materialistic thing in terms of what you have, you know, what you have. I don't think that's the correct mindset anymore as you kind of evolve. For me, it was, you know, success for me was seeing the team grow, our capability of obviously opening more buildings, our client network expanding. And ultimately now, if I look at the grafter role in itself, I think what really success is the clients in terms of like supporting their business and making sure that they're happy. For the grafter role, that's all encompassing. You know, for me, it's just seeing the clients, you know, you get a message every now and again, like, thank you for that. And it's always the small things. It's just the little things. I think that's what success is in that role. Absolutely, yeah.
When you have a sense of personal accomplishment, you know, and you can nearly reflect and say, you know, I feel the success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just even when you walk into the buildings and you can see the team interacting with our members, and it's all the small chat, whether it's just around the coffee machine or whatever. And actually a lot of business happens in the buildings, just even with those chats. And you just have this sense when you walk through of like, okay, we've done something here. That's what I think the success is. Yeah,
it's a great feeling.
Yeah, it is a great feeling.
I love it. And I've seen you've been quite active on socials.
Yeah.
And when we actually spoke, and one of the things you professed is, I don't like social media. It's like, but I think, you know, we are in a digital age.
We are.
Business is, people are presenting their online persona, their online, and also this is, you know, trying to add value for, you know, and not charge for value. What advice do you have for people that are leaders or, you know, have an idea and they want to put a brand out? What advice do you have for those people who are unsure where to start?
At the very get-go, being totally honest with you, it was not a comfort zone of mine whatsoever. I think if you actually spoke to anybody in my previous job, I'd say they're really surprised actually in terms of my presence now in social media. I would have never really engaged with it. LinkedIn's slightly different because you're like, from a sales perspective, you're always kind of, you're doing your posts here and there. But ultimately, actually, our old marketing manager, Zoe, we still work quite closely together. She's moved back to the States. We had a very honest conversation in terms of, she's like, you need to start building your profile and kind of getting out there a bit, you know, a bit more. Particularly because we were part of a wider group and there's a lot more different companies that were going on. She's like, we need to, you know, show that Grafter is a standalone entity in its own right. And I remember having a very honest conversation with her, and she was saying, you know, we need to kind of set up an Instagram account and, you know, that kind of thing, and start growing. I think if anybody was thinking about it, it's really just dipping your toe into it to seeing how you feel. I don't think you're not going to get it 100% right. I look like, even yesterday I was on my phone looking at some posts on Instagram, cringing. Absolutely cringing. But at the same time, but after a while, it's like you become immune to it again. So like at the start, I remember, because they schedule all the posts that go up and you'd be kind of a bit antsy about it. Now I actually don't even, you know, they just kind of flow through in that way. I think my advice to anybody who is thinking about it, I think have an idea of how you want to portray yourself. You definitely, not that you need to have like a very solid plan in itself, in that self, but you know, you want to have your own personality that's come through. In addition to that, it is extraordinarily time consuming.
Yeah.
And I think that as you know, if you're trying to build your business, you're trying to build out your teams, you're trying to do all the training, you're trying to give all the support. And then when you bring in the social media element as well, I think you need to be really honest about actually how much time you're able to dedicate it to it. So I was very fortunate again that I did have Zoe. She's unbelievably good at marketing. So she looks after that piece. Obviously there's an input there, 100%. It's you know, it's my brand, it's my personality in that regard. But you do need to have somebody that is, you know, doing the grit work, as in like putting the videos together. So she would send everything to me, you know, for approval in that way. But it is very time consuming. As much as you know yourself with, you know, doing a podcast, like it's not an easy setup, you know, but it is really worthwhile, because I actually noticed it in myself that in terms of even lead generation for the business, when we went from here to there, it was just a totally different thing. I have so many new contacts now on Instagram. People just like, we're messaging all the time. Yeah. And it's what I used to look at Instagram in one way, in a kind of one dynamic, but there are people who just do business on Instagram. They will never email. Everything is done in the inbox. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow. And I think part of the challenge is somebody might say, I don't have anything to talk about. You know, I don't know what to say. Yeah. But I think if you're leading a business or if you're in an industry, you've got knowledge.
Totally.
And I think you can start small, you know, and build from that. Like, you know, even thoughts, like, do you have any, share your thoughts. And I think it's getting outside of your comfort zone to be able to add that.
I think there's a kind of, so say with recruitment, for example, you're an expert in your field, but those people who are going through who see your social media, they're not. So they will stop if you have something to say. And I always find it's really interesting. It's like things to me that seem the most kind of basic in that sense, but it's actually, but you kind of forget when you're an expert in your field, other people don't know that. Yeah. So it is that kind of back to basics thing of just kind of step 1, 2, and 3 of your knowledge. And I find it's those that actually get the most traction. Yeah.
What I noticed about your social media is the imagery is beautiful. So was there an investment made in, definitely, you know, the photography and because you're selling you're selling, I guess, office space. So making it look phenomenal is part of it as well.
So we would have had, in terms of the marketing budget and plan for the offices itself, so it was really easy to tap into, I suppose, what we had in the archives in that regard. The one thing I would say is, yes, we did put an investment in terms of, you know, my personal branding and the photography. But also, it's really important to say it depends on actually what platform that you're using. So, you know, whether it's a TikTok or if it is an Instagram, it's those people who are really showing what the reality is on their day to day. Like, you see people who, you know, literally are filming themselves from waking up in the morning, going out to have their coffee, doing their lunches here. And actually the biggest influencers are the people who are showing the nitty-gritty of their day, the good and the bad. And those are the people who are doing really well. Yeah. So you don't need to spend a ferocious budget on it whatsoever. But again, it is that fine balance, you know, as a business owner or whoever, in terms of money and time.
I think it's the time, it's the idea creation, it's the application of it, and it's the time. But if you plan and write a strategy, you know, there is a way in there, and also getting over that fear.
Yeah,
for sure.
Honestly, it took me, it did take some time. But again, it was that honest conversation. I remember we were sitting there and Zoe saying to me, you know, what do you want? I was like, just make me feel really uncomfortable. But when you're able to push through, you're in a different realm again. So you just keep building, you know?
Just a little bit more of a personal note. I know that you've, over the last couple of years, have had some real challenges and you've been on a journey with your IVF treatment. And you've spoken openly about it. And I really have to commend you for that, because it's such a private part of somebody's life as well. And what brought you to a place where you felt that you were, you know, ready to talk publicly and openly?
Thank you, first of all. I think it was just this realization. So we had the first miscarriage, I think it was May 24, and then got pregnant again. I think it was August, September. I had actually gone into my second trimester at that point, and you feel that, like, you know, this is it, everything's going to happen. Ultimately, that pregnancy didn't last. But what had happened in that instance was we had to travel to the UK to terminate the pregnancy. And you know, when you get yourself into a situation where you go, I actually can't believe this. But it was more the education piece of actually how many women were traveling to do it. And then maybe I kind of thought to myself, like, maybe I'm being really, really naive here and like head in the sand. But I remember, actually, obviously I travelled over to Liverpool. I remember talking to the nurses in the clinic there, and they were kind of educating me, because I was asking them, you know, what is the situation? They had 40 clinics in the UK, all of them so busy. I, as I said, used to live in London. So in your moment of crisis, you always retreat to what you know. And I used to live in Clapham. So I was like, okay, we're going to go to the clinic in Clapham because I know the area. And they're like, you don't have a decision on where you're going here because it's so busy. So it just really got me thinking. And then over the years, throughout the entire fertility process, I kept everything to myself. And, you know, mentally, it wasn't good. And I remember, because we're probably 4 or 5 years into the process now at this point. And I felt that I kind of got to a certain place where I needed to talk to even just my close friends about it. And once I took that step, it's like a weight off your shoulders. But I just couldn't kind of get my head around the fact that this was impacting so many women in the country. But how widely spoken about is it? So I just felt like, you know, time to try and change it. And if I'm able to help one person, then amazing. But what subsequently happened from it now is that I have on my WhatsApp I've met probably 3 or 4 women now who I would never really have spoken to before, and we're able to bounce ideas off one another and kind of support. I had this, or we saw that, or even just event.
Wow.
You know, and I just trying to normalize the conversation both inside and outside the office. And similarly with men, you know, they don't sit. I think women are great because they'll sit down at a table and they'll talk. But I think men are different, probably generalizing a bit, but, you know, it's trying to open up that conversation to them as well. Like, it's okay to talk about fertility. It's okay about the challenges. And that was really my view on it. So I'll continue on and hopefully we normalize it more. You know.
Like 5 years is quite a period of time,
It
you know,
is,
and I have friends and people that are close to me that have gone through the journey.
Yeah.
And like that has to take a
Definitely.
toll, but also the resilience that you need because of the highs and the lows.
Definitely.
And I can't imagine the ups and downs and the, you know, how it would impact your life. And how have you managed to manage those emotions and yourself and set up a business and run a business in the middle of it all?
Admittedly, I throw myself into business for distraction.
Okay.
I think there's definitely been some very dark days on it. There's been some great days too. But again, it comes back to that honesty piece with the team. Like, I've been very fortunate in the fact that, you know, I have several people within the company that I'm able to have very honest conversations about it. And I remember even the second time when I was pregnant, you know, our head of finance, bless him, you know, bringing me into a meeting room being like, because I was like, no, everything's great. Everything's brilliant. And him sitting me down and being like, there's something not right here.
Yeah.
And then he opened up actually in his own experience, which was amazing. And actually that really helped me coach through. Unfortunately, he'd gone through such an awful experience, but he was able to educate me. And I'm so grateful for that. It was really difficult. You're going into the office early in the morning to do your injections. Then I'm traveling to London. I used to call it like my fertility first aid kit, going through, you know, your security every week. But that's just what it is, you know. But you need to have that support in and outside the office in order to get through it. Yeah.
And I think sometimes because it's the physical aspect of it is happening for the woman. I think, you know, nearly your partner or the person supporting you, you know, your husband, your partner, whoever it is, nearly takes the support role.
Definitely.
So they're somewhat, maybe they don't feel they have a right nearly in that moment because, you know, the physical aspect is happening with you.
Absolutely. And, you know, they're looking from the outwards perspective in, trying to support. And it's really challenging for them to try and figure out what's right. And so one day it could be the right thing, the next day it could be the wrong thing. So it's kind of this balancing act. And then I have spoken about it before, you know, as a woman, you know, the physicalities of it in terms of, you know, you still have to go to that, speak at an event. You still need to, you know, whether it's a podcast or this or whatever. But over time, when you're going through that fertility process, your body changes. But, you know, when she gets pregnant and everything else in between, and, you know, going through all of that up and down, I suppose, mentally is also very, very challenging. So again, it's just having that openness to talk about it as well, because there is good and bad days.
I know you've mentioned that. I think you were on a podcast, and I heard you say that you were going to perhaps take a break from it for a little while. And what does that mean for you then, you know, personally?
I think it was, so that had happened to us probably, it was September, October time between, you know, when we got into the second trimester and things obviously hadn't worked. And then we're coming up to Christmas, and I feel like I was kind of really putting myself under pressure, being like, okay, we need to, you know, think about this again. When are we going to do it? Oh, is it the new year? And it's kind of like the clock is ticking on it. You have the whole thing, you know, the paranoia of how old you are first, you know, and then the timelines of everything. And then I think we just got to January and we're like, no, like just leave it lie for a while. And I'm actually so grateful that we decided to do that, because you just need that time. It's a physical battle and it's a mental battle too. So now we're April, I'm trying to think about it again. So it's nice to be able to kind of just think about it gradually. But it's been great to have the break.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Really, really good.
Just the headspace and the you know, because it is a roller coaster. You start to vision or you start to plan, and you know, and if you have some disappointment with that, and I'm so sorry to hear that you had to travel for, you know, a termination. Like, I can't imagine what that must have been like for you.
Yeah, no, it's you know, there's so many women that have had to do it, and it's all like looking back on hindsight now. Like, we had to terminate that pregnancy. I think it was a Friday. I was back in the office on the Monday.
Oh, Emma.
But it's because you're kind of in survival mode. And then, but ultimately what had happened, the knock-on effect of that was that I got myself into Christmas and I hadn't processed it properly. And it all just hit me then come Christmas time. So we needed to take the break. Yeah, definitely.
And it's mentally probably, and hopefully done you some good, you know, to take that break. You know, you're clearly an extremely resilient woman.
Like I'm not sure, but we'll see.
Oh, you like all your jobs, you've been thrown in at the deep end, and now you're going through your own personal challenges. You're an incredibly resilient woman. You should be very proud of yourself. You really are. You know,
thank you. I appreciate that.
And what support mechanisms did you identify and then put in place for yourself?
There are a couple of different things. I think ultimately at the start it was bad because I wasn't talking to anybody about it. And then I think when you start opening up about it and you actually listen to other people's stories, I think that's been really, really helpful. And then really just looking after yourself, you know, making time to go to the gym, making time to give that headspace. Admittedly for me, my safe zone is the gym, going in and out. And it's, my week can be so hectic because some days, you know, I could come in, I could be in Dublin Monday, Tuesday, I could be back in London Wednesday, Thursday, back to Dublin. But it's also trying to keep that consistency. But I've had to actually check myself every now and again so that I just stop, because you know that you need to go and get your exercise done. Actually more, not even for physical, but actually for mental. So if you can kind of identify those, and it's okay to have a breakdown in between it all, because it's going to happen. So you also have to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Good. And you're so honest and so real about it. And I agree with you. I think if I miss the gym for a few days, you know, I'm feeling uneasy.
Yeah.
It's just,
absolutely.
it is total headspace.
It is.
And
it is.
What advice do you have for employers that, you know, maybe they are unaware of staff members that are going through fertility, or they are aware and they're just, you know, not sure what to do or say?
It can be tricky in a sense because you don't want to be, you know, going through the door being like, who's going through this and whatever, you know, the kind of way. But it's just trying to open up. I think in terms of trying to open up those very honest conversations, I have found personally when I share a personal story or a challenging time, when you speak to a team member, they'll open up as well, you know, or they'll go away and think about it. And actually, because you've opened up, when they feel comfortable to do so, they will too. And it just kind of fosters that. I don't think it's sending out an email being like, hey guys, you know, if any, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not really, but it kind of, so it depends on the size of your business as well. Like, I'm very fortunate that we have very tight knit, it's a small team, you know, but again, yeah, it's being comfortable with showing that vulnerability and then creating a safe space for them to come to you. Yeah.
That's really good advice. Yeah. It's a natural place to be.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up, can you share what might be next for you?
A few conversations going on.
Okay. Say no more. Say no more.
I think ultimately, if I, you know, I'm very interested in terms of the travel piece. I'm very interested in getting to my head into different markets. If I could I do split my time pretty much 50-50 between London and Dublin anyway. It's kind of more solidifying that. That's probably where I'm going. So that's my gut. Whether that works out or not is a different thing, but we'll see. Yeah.
And 3 fun questions to wrap up. So if you were stuck in, and I'm always so interested in people's answers, you know, it says a lot about you, so answer wisely. If you were stuck on a desert island, what 3 items would you bring and why?
So I thought about this question and I was like, there's no way I could spoof this. I'm not going to be out with the fishing net and a knife. I was like, I wouldn't even know what I'd be doing. I was trying to think about this. I was like, swimwear, sun cream, and as much beer as I could possibly bring over and just let nature take its course.
So a holiday. Basically, you're going on a break.
I definitely don't need my phone. I'm very comfortable on my own. But no, I'm not going to be going out, you know, fishing and this, that, and the other. I just try and figure it out.
You get all of your nutrition and your calories from the beer. That's all you need to know.
That's it. Yeah.
And what was the last book you read or podcast that you listened to?
So I love podcasts. I'm listening to podcasts all the time. I'm not a reader. So in the evenings when I come home and I'm cooking or whatever, I always put a podcast on. I've been following Roxy Nafusi. I don't know if you know her. She is huge in the manifestation space. So she's written a number of different books. She recently was on a podcast called Untapped. That is it's Spencer Matthews, actually. It's his new podcast. Roxy Nafusi is very interesting woman, similar age to myself, maybe 2 or 3 years younger. And she came from a very dark place in her life where I think she was an addict, and she really, really just, didn't like herself. And she speaks so honestly on that podcast. And she's kind of turned to manifestation to try and pull herself out of that. Now she's extraordinarily successful now. And I thought it was really, really good podcast. She just sits down there. She's just so honest. She openly talks about how lonely she was during that time. And even the manifestation of love, and her partner now, she has a child and her own thriving business. But she, it's very interesting in a way, whether you believe in manifestation or not, the fact that you're able to kind of sit down and try and figure out, I suppose what I'm trying to do now is like, where am I going next? I'm trying to create that plan and visualize what you want. And she's amazing for that. Yeah.
I must check it out. I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Like I try and make space for just quiet the mind.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to do. You have to be really disciplined with it. Quiet the mind and think and try and get clarity about what the future is.
Yeah.
If you were having a dinner party, what 3 guests, or who would you bring?
I was thinking about this
it's a hard one. I always change mine.
It is really difficult. So if I was thinking about it from a business perspective, I've always looked at Anna Leary and what she's done. I'd love to meet her. She's been extraordinarily successful now. Also, what's really on my radar is Sculpted by Amy. And in terms of what I thought was amazing with her is her expansion into the UK. Also noticed that she's hanging out in the US a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's actually just 2 Irish business women and how they've, gone through their own careers. I think it's unbelievable what Amy is actually, what she's going. So I'd be so interested to speak to her. It's also like, in my mind, I'm like, just invite the girls over. My third person actually would probably be Chris Martin in Coldplay. Not that he would ever accept the invitation.
He's going to sing at it for you, yeah.
He's a huge advocate for mental health.
Yeah.
I think he's really, really interesting. He also seems to be a very nice guy. Obviously traveled the world, so I think he'd be a really interesting person to talk to. So a little
fun.
bit, a different dynamic.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Amazing.